You know a movie is good when even a month or two after watching it, you're still thinking about it and going, yeah, that was a pretty good movie. It's been a while since I last felt that with a movie, and although I might have a few nitpicks here and there with the plot and the characters, the new Superman movie was a very pleasant surprise. Sure, it didn't have any of the deep or complex storytelling most movies want you to believe equates to great writing, but it was a simple and fun movie I would happily watch again. And have. The new Superman movie definitely captures the essence of what it means to be Superman, but I don't just want to talk about the Superman movie in this video. No, instead I want to discuss Superman more as a concept than a character from a specific franchise, and why most writers fucking suck at writing a Superman type character. This goes beyond just making an invincible person who can leap tall buildings in a single bound and get confused for a bird or a plane. This is deeper, because the truth about a Superman character and the ways in which we interact with a Superman character can say a lot about who we are as people and what we believe. Our core values can inform not only how we view Superman, but also how we attempt to write heroes in general, and maybe even how we tend to enjoy Superman to be depicted. But a good hero for my bank account right now is today's sponsor, Aura. I want you guys to think about a time when a company you trusted announced a data breach involving your personal information. What went through your mind as you processed the news? What actions did you take to respond? And most importantly, what actions did you not take to respond? Because not responding or taking any action in this moment right now could leave you vulnerable to future data breaches. After all, hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. So if you live in America like I do, you might want to listen to what I have to say. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from National Public Data, which offers personal information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternate names and birth dates. And members of the hacker group have reportedly released this information for free online. I don't know about you guys, but as a person who has had their passwords stolen in the past, that sort of thing is incredibly terrifying to me. Oftentimes we think it can't happen to us until it does, and we're left without any idea of what to do or who to call. Even if you're doing your best to keep your identity safe, things like this can still happen. And by the time you realize it has happened, it'll already be too late. That's why it's so important to get ahead of it and prepare for the worst. If you weren't taking precautions with your personal information online before, this should be a huge wake-up call. You've never been more vulnerable online than you are right now. But for me personally, I'm not too worried because I use Aura. Aura alerts me if my phone number, email, or social security number is on the dark web. They're going to let me know fast if anyone tries to use this information to get access to my credit or bank accounts. They also give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario ever happen to me again. There's also a ton of other features to keep you safe online, all inside one easy-to-use app. You can go to my link, aura.com/scrit, to try 14 days for free. That will be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data has been exposed. I highly recommend you do this right now because not only is National Public Data not going to do anything to help you, they're probably not going to face any repercussions for this leak. And if there aren't any repercussions, that more than likely means it's going to happen again. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/scrit and try 2 weeks for free. Anyways, back to the rest of the video. I've been developing a philosophy and a theory about the difference between selflessness and selfishness, which I might go into a little more detail about in a future video, but I believe the basics are important for understanding Superman as a character. Because Superman is not just a hero, he's a superhero. He is a paragon of good and kindness. He's an ideal. And although many people may be quick to say that ideals are impossible to achieve, I would counter that and say ideals are meant to be strived towards. They are a direction for us to make progress. Perhaps our ideals are impossible in the present, but the more we strive towards those ideals, the more possible they seem to be. Perhaps feeding everyone in the world is an ideal, but I would like to think it's at least a good idea to make sure people don't go hungry in the world. And related to this is the ideal of selflessness. I have noticed a lot of people I've discussed this topic with seem to have a misunderstanding of what selflessness really means. It's not really a matter of personal definition either. There is an objective definition of selflessness. It's just that it's a little difficult to wrap your head around. For me, selflessness and its opposite, selfishness, must be viewed as two halves of one whole, one half being our intentions and the other being our actions, the internal and the external. But first, I'd like to lay the groundwork of a few terms and what they mean from a philosophical and logical standpoint. Those terms being opposites and mutual exclusivity. Let's imagine that we have a six-sided die. When we roll it, we get a number between 1 and 6. Let's say we roll a 1, and then we roll a 6. Well, we logically know it is impossible for us to roll a 1 and a 6 at the same time. However, we also know there are more possibilities for the dice to roll, such as a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5. No matter how much we might try, the dice can only be one number at a time. This is what's known as mutual exclusivity. Now, let's imagine instead that the criteria we are measuring isn't the numbers themselves, but rather their categories. Imagine we're judging a dice based on whether or not it rolls an even number or an odd number, for example. In this scenario, we can either roll an even number or an odd number, and so these things are both mutually exclusive and opposite to each other. But some of you might be saying, well, what if we roll 2 dice? Then it's possible to roll both. And this is where we transition to my analogy. Let's imagine one of our dice is action, while the other dice is intentions. Now let's imagine we use selflessness to represent a number being even, where we use selfishness to represent the number being odd. What happens when we roll both dice? Well, let's think about it. Let's say we roll 1 even number and 1 odd number, a 3 and a 4, just to keep it simple. That means the dice are simultaneously odd and even, right? Wrong. Our dice is odd because the total number between these two dice is 7. In other words, we've only rolled an odd number. This is true whenever we roll an odd number and an even number together. If only one action is selfish, then the total is always selfish. We can have selfish intentions, but because those actions were done for selfish reasons, then the total is selfishness. Meanwhile, we can also have selfless intentions, but a selfish action, meaning we still have a total of selfishness. Now, admittedly, this analogy falls apart when we consider that 2 odd numbers create an even number, whereas selfish intent and selfish action are still selfish. Either way, we require 2 even numbers, that being selfless action and selfless intentions, in order for our total to be selfless. Here's what I mean. Let's say, for example, there is an old lady struggling to put her groceries in the car. A selfish person might help the old lady for selfish reasons, such as the expectation of a reward, or because it makes them feel like a good person, or signals to others that they are a good person. Now, the act itself is still selfless, but the intentions are selfish. So this is considered a selfish act of good. It happens every day, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Now, in order to be a selfless person in this scenario, both the intentions and the action itself must be selfless. A selfless person would help the old lady with her groceries because she's an old lady who needs help with her groceries, and it's only right to help her. And it's here we see a lot of people screaming out, well, what's the difference? The old lady was helped in the end anyway. But this is also where we see the core reason why most writers don't understand Superman as a character, and sometimes hate this character. Let's say, for example, that we will neither be rewarded nor acknowledged for our good deeds. Let's also say it's possible we might be punished for doing kind and selfless things. What would you do if someone else was getting unfairly harassed at your place of employment? What if sticking up for that person could mean that you would lose your own job? What does a selfish person do in this scenario? Nothing. They do nothing. And I want to stress that there's nothing wrong with that either. It doesn't make you a bad or evil person to do nothing. However, it also means you're not a good person. Because a good and selfless person would do good and selfless things even if it is at their own expense. Not because they expect a reward or some sort of transaction or the veneer of being a good and selfless person to other people, but because it is what they know they should do no matter the consequences. This is an ideal, and we can't always act in an ideal way. Fear can prevent us from being our best selves. The fear of making things worse for the other employee. The fear that we might become the target of the harassment instead of just a bystander. The fear that our efforts are in vain or that perhaps our judgment is incorrect and maybe the person we're trying to help would not appreciate our help at all in the first place. We see this perfectly illustrated in the scene where Lois Lane interviews Superman at the beginning of the movie. Lois brings up a lot of very valid and reasonable points to Superman. Superman is threatening the leader of a country, torturing him with a cactus, ignoring international laws, and generally doing vigilantism. But Superman's only response is, people were going to die. He can't stand by and watch people be killed because a law is broken by saving them. He can't stand by and watch people be killed in front of him just because it's illegal to save them. He can't allow a dictator to inflict harm on others. He's Superman. Whatever systems of law, authority, and power enable an authoritarian to inflict suffering are things which should be ignored. Superman is the quintessential example of a neutral good character. He's willing to break the laws and consider breaking his own codes if it means doing the right thing. He's not lawful good like everybody tends to think of him. He does what is best for whatever situation he's in. I think there are a lot of people who misunderstand Superman as a character because they've got a chip on their shoulder about this concept. Many like to believe that everyone is selfish if you really think about it, but to me, I think it's just telling that they don't know how to be selfless when it matters. Yes, we can be motivated by good reasons, but those good reasons can also still be selfish. All selfless actions and intentions are good, but not all good is selfless. Just the same, all evil is selfish, but not all selfishness is evil. I recognize that this might be difficult to understand, especially if you're just listening to this. Hey, by the way, second monitor, hey, pay attention right now. There's a little thing on screen that might be able to help you. I've done the favor of constructing a Venn diagram to illustrate what I mean about selfishness, selflessness, good, neutral, and evil. So you might want to study that. As you can see, it is possible to be a good person who is selfish. It's also impossible for an evil person to be selfless, and for a neutral person to be selfless without also being good. Now, a neutral person is something I haven't really talked about yet, but it's something I want to briefly cover. Basically, a character or person with a neutral moral alignment is not always motivated to do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. More so, they are motivated to do things because it serves them to do so. A neutrally aligned person is willing to commit evil actions up to a certain threshold of guilt and personal morality. They're also willing to do good when it serves them, or be selflessly good out of a sense of duty and obligation to others. These are the Punishers, the Deadpools, and basically any mercenary archetypes that you might see in fiction. They might be antagonists, anti-heroes, anti-villains, or whatever else. What separates a neutral person and an evil person is whether or not they will commit evil at the expense of others. And the parts where a neutral and an evil character intersect are in situations in which the environment incentivizes evil, wherein a soldier who is just following orders may commit heinous atrocities just so they cannot be the ones who are harmed instead. This is a neutral and an evil character. Meanwhile, an evil character will only commit a good action when it serves them, and the moment a good action no longer serves an evil character, they will do whatever selfish action benefits them the most, even if it is at the expense of others. And if it happens that sadistic or merciless action benefits them from an emotional standpoint, then they will do so without remorse. Sure, evil characters can have selfless justifications for their actions, but there is no such thing as a selfless evil action. Thanos from the MCU is another character I want to bring up as an example of how writers can't seem to understand how to make a nuanced and believable villain character, or why they seem allergic to just allowing a character to be pure evil. Thanos in the MCU is depicted as this tragically altruistic villainous character, one who is treated in some ways as having the correct perspective of the situation. He sees that the galaxy is hurtling towards the depletion of its resources, and so he seeks out the Infinity Stones to wield their godlike powers in an effort to solve this issue. And how does he decide to use those godlike powers to solve this issue? Genocide. Indiscriminate genocide. Okay, so here's the thing. Genocide is never selfless. I think we can and should all agree on that. Killing half the population of the galaxy is an ultimate act of evil, the likes of which can never be morally justified. Just because Thanos can come to love his own daughter, that doesn't make him nuanced or selfless. It means that he's a psychopath who is so dead set on doing genocide for altruistic purposes that no one else can convince him to stop. He's not a good person, and his actions are not selfless, nor are his motivations ultimately morally gray or good. I bring Thanos up because he's often used to counter this idea that evil is always selfish. But if you've been watching this far, you know why that's not the case. And in fact, I think the movie universe Thanos' motivations leave a lot to be desired. After all, there are 1,000,001 different ways Thanos could have thought of going about this, but he ultimately lands on the option which is going to cause the most pain and suffering for everyone involved. I mean, imagine if half of all of your friends and family just up and die. Half of all your coworkers, or all the people in the world. Jobs would be left vacant. People would be left without parents to support. Parents would have their children taken from them too soon. It's even possible that entire bloodlines or species would get wiped out by a bad roll of the dice, simply because there's a lot of dice being rolled, or rather, a lot of coins being flipped. Heck, on the scale Thanos was doing it, the entire population of a planet had the potential of getting wiped from existence if they were unlucky enough, just because that's how indiscriminate random chance works on such a ludicrously massive scale like the galaxy. Entire world economies would collapse. People would be thrust into the Dark Ages. New inventions would fall into obscurity before they could be fully realized. What if this killed the guy who was gonna cure cancer, or solve world hunger, or cure space cancer and solve space hunger? What then? None of Thanos' motivations make any damn sense. For me personally, I prefer Thanos' motivations in the comics because, well, they actually fucking make sense. He is an evil space warlord who wants to kill as many people as possible to get the attention and favor of Death herself. He wants to marry Death. He worships her. He has a one-sided infatuation with her. That makes sense. That is a logical motivation for why he might want to kill half of the entire universe. He's trying to appeal to the physical embodiment of death itself. Of course he's trying to commit genocide. Why wouldn't he? That's fully in alignment with what his character wants. I think a lot of writers have a chip on their shoulder when they try to write characters like Thanos or Superman, especially with the Schneider version of Superman and the MCU version of Thanos. No, these characters are not nuanced. They're not written better. And at the very best, Schneider vs. Superman is not Superman. And speaking of the Schneider cut, we need to discuss why Schneider's Superman fails where James Gunn's Superman succeeds. Now, I'm the last person who's going to start crying about politics or speculating on the lives of James Gunn or Zack Schneider. In fact, I don't think Schneider's Superman is even a poorly written character. He's just not Superman. The core of Superman is, once again, kindness and selflessness. It doesn't matter if performing an act of good might get him in trouble. Superman is going to do the act of good if it is an act of good. It doesn't matter how much power Superman has over other people. He's already doing everything that he wants. He wouldn't be corrupted by the power that he holds. He only wants to help people, and that's what he's going to do. That means saving his father from a tornado, even if it means people will learn of his existence. That means sparing Zod's life, even if Zod is threatening to kill people. Superman will find a way because he is Superman. And although Superman doesn't technically have a no-kill rule like Batman does, he's only going to reserve killing for a very specific circumstance. Because vanquishing evil does not just mean killing people who commit evil. It also means rehabilitation. It means putting evil in a place where it has no choice but to do good. It means making a better world where doing good for others is the easiest thing to do. And it is here where I bring up my first comparison of a writer who understands the core of a Superman-type character and someone who is offended by it. The Boys and Invincible are often compared. Heck, I've already made this comparison before on this channel. But to keep it brief, Mark from Invincible is written by someone who understands the core of a Superman-type character. Homelander from The Boys is written by someone who does not understand or may even be offended by the idea of Superman. Mark constantly goes out of his way to do the right thing, even if he knows it's going to end badly for him. It's the reason he gets his ass kicked most of the time. He has to stand up to evil. He does not have all the power in the world like Superman does. He has enemies who are far stronger and more dangerous than he is. Mark rarely needs to hold back, and in fact, he often has to push himself beyond his limits just to do the right thing, but he still does it. Invincible is Superman in a world where Superman is not the most powerful being in the universe. Meanwhile, Homelander is Superman, but if a real person had Superman's powers. Yes, oftentimes the writing in The Boys comes off as insecure and generally cynical for me. It feels as though the writer believes it's impossible to have power and not be corrupted by it. There are many who will recite the idiom of power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And to me, that's just not true. It's honestly a skill issue for those who gain power. The issue is not that having absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's that selfish and corrupt people are more likely to chase and abuse power than selfless or virtuous people are. If you think that you'd just start killing people, robbing banks, and running the planet if you had Superman's powers, consider why that is and what it says about you as a person. For me, when I think of power, I don't think of all of the amazing things it can do for me. I don't think of the money or the fast cars or being viewed as a powerful leader by other people or even changing the laws to suit my personal tastes. I think about how much of a responsibility that power is. I think about the people who might be harmed by an action I've taken too recklessly. I think of the burden it may put on others if I make the wrong decision. And so I don't seek out leadership. I don't seek power. I don't even like the idea of leading my own YouTube channel's community or growing this audience and becoming internet famous. It's a responsibility, and it's nothing but trouble in the end. It's bad enough when my mistakes lead to my own shortcomings and consequences. It's worse when my mistakes affect others in a negative way. I personally want my channel to grow, and I want people to see my videos and read my books. However, I don't want to be the person at the center of it. I want my work to be at the center of those things. I'm just a random guy. Some of you in the audience might be able to relate with that sentiment, not wanting fame or power for its own sake, thinking of the responsibilities and shying away from leadership. I'm here to tell you, that's exactly why you should become a leader. That's why you should do all you can to grasp power and wield it responsibly. Because power is meant to serve others while it binds us. A true leader frees the people by enslaving themselves. And that's a difficult thing to do. It's a selfless thing to do. And above all, it's what we need in this world right now more than anything. So when you see Superman on screen, you should know that he is an ideal. He is a depiction of something we have deemed to be impossible. And yet, seemingly, he is only ever just out of our reach. We can't ever seem to grasp it in this cruel and cynical world where the powerful are always corrupt and the powerless are always oppressed. People might believe it is in our nature to be selfish, that we must all be cynically self-serving, even when we do good for those around us. But maybe, just maybe, if we fight against our nature, we can do what humans have always done. We can transcend it. We can build a better world, plant trees for which we may never sit in the shade of. Maybe we can fight against the norm, break out of our cynical beliefs, and fight the system which keeps us downtrodden. Maybe we can all be a little more punk rock in a selfish world and choose to be selfless. And maybe we can inspire others to do the same, make our marks in time to show others an ideal which we can strive ever closer towards. But it all starts with selfless action. One selfless action with selfless intent. Writing can be for ourselves, or it can be a gift we give to others. So in this moment, give to the world, open up a document, and start writing.